We are back and ready to kick off match number 1 of the day. It's Surrender versus che0nsu. And like I said beforehand, it's top of the table and not Surrender being at the top this time. Of che0nsu versus Surrender, who's currently 0-2 so far in Grandmasters Season 2. So a lot to play for both these players. If che0nsu can get a win, he's going to end week 2 3-1, which is pretty good. Gives you a lot of leeway.
It's just a complete flip around of what we saw last season. Obviously, Surrender qualifying through to BlizzCon. He was our champion of Season 1, and che0nsu was coming up pretty close to the bottom of the table, actually, in Season 1. And it's just been an interesting start to Season 2 across all regions, with Fino, I believe, now 0-3 in his record. Like, all the players who qualified just, seem to just be doing very poorly. I haven't been keeping up with Americas so much because it's like 3 in the morning. But this matchup is an interesting one for another reason, as you said, not only for the placings of both of these players, but for the first time it looks like we have pretty much a mirror match.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, it's funny because there's different bands and different shields, right? Like there's che0nsu shielded as Druid, which again is a little bit amusing because now che0nsu is playing Druid, and he played Druid a lot last season, but lost a lot with Druid, I think, which was Token Druid. But now Quest Druid becoming very, very popular this week as one, I think, a relatively few games needed to really have a grasp of the deck, you know, to be decent at it, I would say, because of its fairly straightforward game plan, but also just being a steady pick to almost replace Mage, whereas Surrender's valued Warrior higher by shielding that, and he's actually, Surrender's had his Warlock banned out. Very interesting.
I mean, on all actions that Surrender has taken, it's all been to do with Warrior. He shielded Warrior and then banned Warrior, which clearly indicates what his overall game plan is out. I wonder if he was expecting his Zoo to be banned, because if so, like, the Zoo is a terrible matchup against Warrior, so maybe he was thinking, let's get rid of the Warrior. But then with his Zoo being banned away, maybe that was a, I don't know, a miscalculation on Surrender's part, or maybe he still just thinks that the Warrior was the worst deck for him to see.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I guess a lot of it really relies on your thoughts of the rest of the matchups, because Warrior mirrors are, by their nature, a mirror match. So you can't really say, oh, I'll win the mirror if we play it. You know, you can't really go that far. And then, you know, queries about how good Hunter is versus Warrior, and then, like you said, Zoo, and then Druid. I think Warrior was actually Surrender's hardest deck to deal with in isolation for his lineup, which makes me again wonder that che0nsu's shielded his Druid and not banned out Warrior from Surrender, obviously, because it was shielded. So I think maybe Surrender's got the better handle on the pick and ban.
I think just about, I would agree with that. Yeah, I think that the Warrior is just, in general, in a very good spot. And it's kind of similar to last week, because last week it was obviously Warrior and Mage were the pretty much ubiquitous picks that were played by pretty much everyone, and Warrior struggled against the Mage. This time we're seeing Warrior and Druid being the pretty much all-around being picked by everyone class. And the Warrior feels like it struggles against the Druid, but is good against everything else. So it's an interestingly very similar dynamic.
And it's where we sort of touched on it yesterday, but I feel like we're getting closer to maybe your approach should be, if they just win with their shield, then what do my 2 versus 2 look like? Like, what does that look like? And am I favored? And if you are, then let them have, don't let them, but say they just get the win, then, well, if you're favored, then in the next game, you should win 2-1. In general,
it's going to be interesting.
But it's very difficult to build a lineup that ticks those boxes, because you've also got your opponent's ban to take into account.
Very true. But Surrender here on the Highlander Hunter, which we didn't talk about, because we've seen it a fair bit in the last week or two of Grandmasters and in Masters to Soul as well. In this matchup, it feels very, very much imperative, even more than against other matchups for the Highlander Hunter, that you want to get the ball rolling with damage as quick as you humanly can.
Yeah, and funnily enough, there's no high main in this list. This is like another evolution where instead there's the Hyena, which was not, or has not been typically included. There is a Desert Spear, which again, if you're playing Hyena, Desert Spear is pretty good, makes those 1-1s with Rush. And also there's a Houndmaster, which again, along with Baited Arrow, there's a lot more beasts in this deck, which is, you know, kind of compound on each other, making themselves or each other better. So we'll see how it plays off, but already the good thing about this matchup, or any time against Druid, is you almost have a free 1 to 5 turns to do whatever you can, and then the Druid kicks it.
It's true. That is, however, assuming they don't have any removal early on, which the deck is, you know, fairly stocked full of. Like, they have a decent amount of stuff to do early on, with the rats primarily, and then bees, swipe, Loti, even Crystal Merchant, just to put something on the board.
They do have to play it off curve, though.
Right, exactly. Well, optimally they would. They don't have to.
Oh, yeah, okay. So...
That's where it gets tricky.
And that's why I really like Doomsayer. Because a lot of the times it buys you like 1.5 turns.
Yeah.
Which feels pretty good to me.
It's one of those cards, right, where if you get it on turn 3, yes, it's amazing. If you get it any point after that, it sucks.
Yeah.
Because there's no freeze effects in Druid.
Now Svender's got some choices. I think he's really just thinking Ursatron versus Animal Companion. But I think I would rate the Animal Companion higher. Because if you roll Huffer, there you go. So you've seen a Wrath. Yeah. And if che0nsu swipes, which is the second, you know, swipes or bees, well, bees is annoying, but...
There's only one.
But still, there's only one in the deck. Yeah. And if swipe comes down, well, you've gained a turn, effectively.
Exactly.
So it's kind of a good situation no matter what. che0nsu,
I really like this play.
Gonna hero power into the Zephyr to set up the swipe, but look at his health!
He's just dying, and he doesn't even have the quest active going into turn 5, which is the problem of being on the play rather than on the coin, and of course not finding the innovate.
And Surrender will know exactly what's coming, because that attack wouldn't have been
100%.
made if there was any other play possible.
Yeah.
There's no rats, there's no bees, it's swipe, because there's no other play that's going to be reasonable.
I mean, you could make the read that he wants to hero power it down twice, but I think...
Great.
Yeah, exactly. If that happens, you win the game. Yeah.
So I would really like from Surrender just a Life Drinker, Smorker.
It does make it more awkward for swipe, which is pretty important. The Ursatron has the benefit of if it survives, which it's reasonable to assume it might, because you would probably swipe the Huffer over the Ursatron. You could then magnetize Ziliax on top of it, and then set up for Life Drinker hero power on turn 6. After the Ziliax comes down on 5. So, you know, Ursatron does set up a game plan for a couple of turns.
True. I guess if you're assuming swipe comes down, you push 3, and then if next turn there's the... if next turn there's the... what's the word I'm looking for? The Hidden Oasis. Right. I keep wanting to call it Surgeon. It's just not. They just both have Oasis in. If it's the Hidden Oasis on turn 6, then you do have to have a game plan to deal with that. So I think maybe this slightly slower play is a little bit better.
But that's the thing, is it's not even slower. It still puts the same stats on the board, and it steps up to Ziliax, which is a nightmare-sized minion for Oasis Surgeon. I think this was a fantastic play from Surrender.
I think it's actually
and it wasn't obvious.
Strictly better.
It is pretty much just strictly better, yeah.
Now...
Yep, rough position here for che0nsu. We could, of course, see Nourish come down on this turn to set up for the Anubis defenders.
And this is really funny. I think I was saying in Discord, I don't know if you've read it or not, but after the patch, even though I was hating a little bit on Highlander Hunter, I think post-patch it got significantly better. Yeah. So the fact that Surrender's gone a little bit lower curve with this list now, I would have been angry at last week, but this week, because of Druid, it makes a bit more sense.
It's so interesting you say that, and I agree. I think, you know, going for a preying on the Druid hit does make sense, but in the Americas region, I believe there's 0 Highlander Hunters, and Monsanto tweeted out he's proud of the other America GMs for not bringing it because he thinks it's trash. Or not top tier, I suppose.
No, he's trash. It's like, he hates Highlander.
Which is just so interesting to see the difference between regions, because here in Asia Pacific, very highly represented.
8 or something, maybe more. Like, there's a lot.
I mean, you have to subtract 1 from that because Staz, I think, would rather literally die than not submit Highlander Hunter at this point. But for Surrender now, in this game, it's a bit of a rough spot because clearly he's going to be expecting some kind of defensive maneuver to come down.
I think Pressure Plate always has to be played this turn.
To destroy the 6/6 off of Hidden Oasis. Yeah, okay.
Ooh, it's not. He went for Snipe instead to kill. So he's more. Wait, doesn't kill Oasis Surgeon?
Yeah,
I don't know why.
It doesn't kill a lot of things actually, like the Anubis Defender or the Oasis Surges. It would summon 2. It would summon a 5/5 and a 5/1, not 2 5/1.
I believe so.
Yes.
It summons a raw copy of the minion,
and then
it'll get sniped.
Yes, okay.
Effectively. Ooh. And che0nsu's gonna drop down the Loti by the looks of things. And now che0nsu's scared though, because it's like the problem with Loti in this position, you can't not attack.
Right.
Because the taunt doesn't work because it's stealth.
Yeah. So you just got to pray that it's not freezing trap, which we can see it could be.
Well,
which is why I was wondering.
If you think about it.
Well, no, we can see that it could be. We can't see what it is.
Same thing.
Completely different things in this concept.
Oh, okay. I mean,
it was Rat Trap, which is honestly pretty perfect here for Surrender.
Yeah, I think that shook his head and then might have realized that he had to get
He's
shot.
just won. Yeah, exactly.
Because naturally you'd be like, you know, Rat Trap into a poison minion.
Yeah.
It's not really what you're after in life. But it is when it's lethal, and very, very quickly, Surrender cleans game up, game number 1 up, there we go, and is looking pretty confident there. I think that's the fear factor of playing Druid. Extremely powerful deck, but if you get pushed too far in the early game, outside of exactly Hidden Oasis and maybe Ferocious Howl, there's not really a good way to recover. I think you need Oasis even if you lose the taunt instantly, because 12 heal is just a lot.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was a pretty well-played game overall by Surrender. I think he'd set up very clearly his game plan over the first few turns. I mean, even stuff like coining out the Hyena instead of Zephyrus, because although it's 1 less attack a turn earlier, it means Zephyrus will give him a 3-drop instead of a 2-drop, which is what he needed to smooth out his curve. Like, small stuff like that I think was honestly very impressive.
And you've got to say, even playing Hyena, having the Desert Spear, you can see
with
a Houndmaster as well, you can see how the deck kind of just even more consistently snowball in the early game, which is a lot of what a lot of Highlander hunters wanted to do earlier on anyway. But that was just game number 1. We've got plenty more coming up. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with some more che0nsu versus Surrender.
Hearthstone Esports is home to many competitive formats, each with their own unique variants and rules. Today, we're going to break down one of them, the Shield Phase Conquest format. And here's how it works. To start, both players bring 4 decks, each from a unique class. The match starts with a Shield Phase. This is where both players choose one of their own decks to protect, making it ineligible to be banned. Once the Protect phase has ended, both players will then ban one of their opponent's decks, removing it from the pool. Each player then selects which of their remaining decks they would like to play first before beginning the first game of the series. When the first game of the series is over, the winner's deck is removed from their pool of eligible decks. Both players then select the next deck they would like to play. The loser of the first game can choose to replay with the deck they lost with, or they can choose one of their other 2 available decks. In Best of 3 conquests, the first player to 2 wins is the victor. In Best of 5 series, such as those in the semifinals or finals of major events, the first player that makes it to 3 wins takes the W. It's that easy. Shield Phase Conquest allows players to showcase their skill set across different classes, while still giving them the opportunity to play the deck they're most confident with. Now that you've got the download on Shield Phase Conquest, we wish you well on your deck building adventures.
Surrender versus che0nsu, game number 2 coming up, and it is going to be Druid once again for che0nsu versus Surrender's Warrior. So it's going to be some shield-on-shield action, as it's basically going to be the decks that both these players have prioritized.
Yes, it's kind of interesting how the meta has shaken up. I mean, I say the meta in terms of shielding decks, because we haven't seen most players playing their shield class first, or less than I thought it would have been. I don't think it actually matters too much. It's just kind of an interesting observation. As it is, as you said, the two shielded classes going up against each other. And I think while we agreed Surrender probably had a slightly better go of it in the pick and ban phase overall, when they go head to head, it gets a little bit dicey in terms of who whether Surrender is ahead. Because I think even though over the history of these two decks, short as it may be with respect to this new Quest Druid, it's been a little bit up and down. The Warrior, I think, had a good shot with the first builds of Quest Druid, where they were a lot lighter. Yep. A lot of them didn't have the Highlander cards, or che0nsu, or King Feoris, or Malagos, or any of the other late-game win condition cards. It was just a pile of stuff thrown in there, because people realized, oh wait, Oasis Surger on 5 is broken. Let's do something with that. And then very quickly people realized you need a little bit of extra oomph at the end, which is where the Warrior started to struggle.
It is. One thing that Surrender does have going for him, and everyone who is the Warrior in this matchup, I feel, is the Druid is very readable. You're not really going to get surprised, are you? You know exactly what its strong plays are, and you know when they're coming most of the time. The difference is we saw this matchup yesterday, slightly different, I think, because it was versus Bomb Warrior, I believe.
Yes.
And it came down to the wire. Like, it really did, because it came down to multiple Nomis, some getting cleaned off, and Elise proccing, you know, another, basically Elise copied Flute, which copied Nomi in a roundabout way, and so on and so on. The only thing here, I'm just flicking through the list, and I believe my eyes do not see an Elise in this version from che0nsu.
Yeah, Surrender's
Unless I'm blind, right?
it.
It's not there, is it?
No,
okay.
Just Surrender's got it.
And so che0nsu has King Feoris, which can also be a little bit crazy with how much pressure it can put on.
True, and che0nsu.
And Nomi, but no Elise. So it's
limited power.
Yeah, there is no Emperor gifts going around anyway.
Exactly.
So this is what I mean, right? One, Warrior can put on some early threats, i.e. I would love to see this Devastator played by Surrender right now.
So would I.
But also, you know what your opponent can do, and I feel like the game right now is full of classes and decks that can do very, very silly things, and Druid definitely can, but you know when it's coming, right? You know the cards normally do one thing, like Oasis Surger, it's going to be one rough turn of double rush, and then that's it, you just clear it off, because Warrior can.
Interesting to see Surrender holding off on the Omega Devastator here. I guess, you know, it's in no small part due to the fact that it's a 4-5 up against the very high likelihood of 2 5-5 rushes coming down next turn. I think I would say even then, though, with a Dynamatic in hand and the 1-3 on board, it's probably worth just so you can clear them up easily afterwards. Yeah. I just like getting stuff in play and getting in that chip damage.
Yeah, I like it because now surely it's worse to play Dynamatic and then have the Oasis Surges to come down, right? Because you're behind on so much damage. I guess the thing for Surrender is he has 2 Brawls. So maybe he's thinking, if my Brawls get me to turn 10, then I start doing Devastator things. It's a little bit better. But personally, I would have slammed it every single time on full. I think in almost every matchup I play that.
Surrender hates to see that. He was definitely hoping for the 2 out of 3 Mummy there. To kill off the Crystal Merchant. But I guess the consolation is that it's, you know, if che0nsu isn't spending the full 5 mana on Oasis Surger next turn, you're probably pretty happy.
Yeah, and we're going to see no Devastator again, which I think is just a knock-on effect from if you didn't play it on turn 4, you probably aren't going to play it on turn 5. But bad news time.
Yeah, and this is going to get pretty rough pretty quickly now for Surrender because of his hesitance to play out his cards. It does mean Dynamatic is obviously nowhere near clearing, which means he may be approaching the situation, not quite yet, but in the next couple of turns where a Brawl is necessary. And man, are those Brawls important resources in this matchup.
They are, but this card might break that a little bit because our Mega Dillo is now going to taunt the 2 Warden, which doubles up, and a Ziliax, which you've got to say this is going to be either traded into or directly removed, right? And then on top of that, if there's Brawl next turn into buffed Tomb Wardens, into Ziliax, which can kill most minions in the deck.
Yeah.
It might be enough for Surrender to get control, but again, we've got to go all the way back to Dr. Boom has been nerfed. There is no Boom coming down anytime soon, even if Surrender had it in hand. Never mind when he's not. So the rush aspect of Boom is insane in this matchup, because you can keep the Druid's minions down, whereas if you just let, if Surrender just lets che0nsu, which he kind of has to, do what he wants, the minions hit so hard that it's like often just sets up 2-turn kills most of the time.
Tough, bit of a tough choice now for che0nsu as to how he wants to approach this, because like first instinct is Nourish Wrath, but I think that might actually overdraw him.
I actually just like Loti.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I was also looking at like Starfall that he could consider just to get it off, because Starfall is difficult to find a use for in this matchup. But Loti is still an annoying sized minion to chuck on, and I think che0nsu is saying if he brawls this, so what?
Yeah, if he brawls this, he's got a pretty reasonable chance of having a good minion, right? He said 3 out of 4 of the outcomes are good.
Yeah.
And I would say Crystal Merchant, by far the worst. Not a horrible outcome by any means, because, I was just going to mention, che0nsu, although isn't playing some of the other cards, is playing Zephyrus, which means he can just pop a Savage Roar whenever he wants to just lethal Surrender. It's so nuts, that card in this deck, because whenever the board looks like this, you just die. Yeah. You just lose to Zephyrus if it's active.
And that's one of the reasons why I was leaning towards Starfall, because it was mana inefficient, and therefore an extra draw off of the Crystal Merchant would, I guess, have been nice. But, you know, when he's at such a high hand size anyway, he wants to find room for the Nourish. So this makes sense.
And it's more minions on the board, right?
Exactly, yeah. This I guess, on balance, is probably worth it.
And the board still doesn't die to a Warpath. Still keeps the
which is pretty important,
which is huge.
Doesn't die to a Dynamatic. It's not really that vulnerable to a Restless Mummy either. Like, this whole
literally
situation for che0nsu, is pretty fantastic, actually. And Brawl here feels horrible.
No tomb can hold me.
Well, Surrender saying, you know what? Not today. And talking about using his brawls.
Can hold me.
And I think it's reasonable to hold it, because he is potentially facing down, at minimum, 3 gigaboards. Be it through King Feoris, the Nomi, and Floop on one of those 2 minions.
Maybe even 4, because Cenarius is
no
pushover.
I'm saying minimum 3.
Yeah. Cenarius is no pushover. Even if you play it flat, it's a 5/8 and 2/4/4 taunts. It's like, that is a board in itself.
And again, from che0nsu, very nicely sized board here. 3 big minions. If any of them survive the brawl, he's happy. And so Surrender still really doesn't want to go for the brawl, but if he doesn't, he's just going to be chunking a lot of damage.
And this is where we can wind back time and see that Devastator in Surrender's hand and think, if one of those Surges was 1 health right now, things might look a little bit better. Maybe it's snipeable by Dynamatic. Maybe you could have played Dynamatic earlier, and so on, so on. Like, I'm not saying right now a 1 health minion would change the game, but it would have changed the previous turns, which could have impacted the game state.
Right. Things get very complicated very quickly, because first of all, obviously, che0nsu would have played differently had it been in that situation. And also, you know, he just played an Oasis, a Hidden Oasis for a 1 health heal on one of his minions. He obviously would have healed to 4 instead of 1 if it had been that case. It gets very confusing very quickly. And, you know, Surrender will have the benefit later on of having an Omega Devastator, which will look fantastic when it comes down. I personally would have slammed the Devastator as well. I think even if you're getting value traded by an Oasis Surger, which you don't even know for certain is there, and you can mop it up with Dynamatic.
And I think my issue with Devastator is nothing the Druid does is popping a single minion.
That's true.
Like, everything they do is boards, right? At this point in the game, it's always, I'll make a new board. Oh, I'll make another threatening board. So, especially without Rush, the Devastator is still a very good card, but killing 1 minion when the others all have 5 attack or more is not quite as fancy.
So Nourish here will get him up to 10 cards, which is then kind of a problem, because double Wrath would overdraw, unless he draws Innovate, of course. So now we can just see double Wrath, Innovate, push face with the 10. Which doesn't seem ridiculous.
Jeez. Wrath's OP. The only weird thing this does is give him more armor. He could have Starfalled and just killed it with 2 hits of armor gain.
Oh yeah, with the Innovate actually, he could have fitted that in.
I mean, before he even Nourished.
Right,
you could have just Starfalled, whacked him for 10.
Right. Yeah, I was assuming he'd want to play the Nourish on this turn. Like, I agreed this was a good time to do it. At minimum, go with like a double wrap. Yeah, after he found the Innovate.
No, he was a mana off, wasn't he?
If he played double wrap for 4 mana, right, he could have just gone Innovate Starfall.
Oh, yeah,
instead.
sorry, yeah, you're right. For some reason, something like Starfall is like Nourish. 6 mana. And I'm like, wait,
like,
no,
like
it
old
used to be
Nourish.
like Nourish.
Yeah. Did they change Starfall like way back in the day? Didn't it like used to go face or something as well when you did the 2 damage?
I don't, you know what? I don't know. It sounds like something that could have happened.
Yeah.
Now, Starfire, that's a deck that can go, well, a card that can go face.
Oh, yes.
It's just too expensive to make
card
silly
was
decks.
Yeah. He was in playing Malik Druid for a while, right? That was a
yeah, it was
cool
just like
inclusion.
as damage, right?
And also just cycle.
Yeah, and also you could do the Flute Mali into it as well.
Yes.
Because it was obviously 4 mana Mali. But yeah, it was just it was like an inclusion where it's like, I want a card that sometimes does some damage to set up lethal and also cycles. Let's play this random card.
This feels like a much tastier time to go for Starfall,
well.
especially as we could see double Starfall, right, for a pretty much perfect clear.
Oh yeah, double Starfall would work, yeah.
And again, these Oasis Surges, how much damage have they done at this point? It must
1
be
million,
like
I think.
30 damage, 40 damage, right? It's insane. This is 1 minion that he played on turn 5. Like, how is Surrender still alive? Is what I'm honestly wondering at this point.
So here's the Surrender's redemption arc.
Right.
Devastator to kill 1, Dynamatic to kill another,
yes,
win the game.
They're finally dead.
Yeah. That's what he's got to aim for, I think.
Yeah. I mean, yes. Yeah. I was wondering if he'd ever go for Warpath on this turn because he wants to set up for a better, like, Dynamatic plus Devastator. But honestly,
is there a better?
I don't think it's going to get much better than this.
And the problem is, if you Warpath, that's your whole turn.
Right,
and you do nothing.
But then the problem with this development play is if he does this and pulls ahead on board, I think it's extremely likely that che0nsu does something very impressive on the board.
And then he has Brawl.
But then he's just put 2 of the 3 minions in his hand into it, right? Then how does he develop afterwards?
Okay.
Is the downside to this play. Like, you know, okay, whether he goes for Dynamatic...
Yeah, whatever.
This is... It's different, but it's the same theory, right? That he's developing and clearing with minions. Whereas now he's left with 3 complete equal board clears in that they clear his side of the board and his opponent's. And, you know, he's going to struggle to develop onto the board afterwards, and che0nsu's just going to have free reign to go crazy.
I think one of the issues is what happens if you Warpath. Like, it would work out the same where you Warpath that board, they play some minions, you play your minions, then you end up having to Brawl anyway, just later. So
I'm not saying Surrender's play was wrong.
Yeah,
I'm just saying
the predicament,
it sucked.
Yeah, I think the predicament's like almost circular, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter when you get there, but you're going to get there. Yes, you're allowed to put 2 of those in your deck. Technically, sometimes 3 with Flip. It honestly could be a legendary card. That.
Oasis.
It's because of the quest, of course, but
yeah, it feels like a legendary card when it's played.
The power level, I would say, would easily make legendary.
Through the roof. Now we're looking at, I suppose, you know, potentially 5 Warpaths, but also just double Warpath Devastator is definitely tempting to get something... Sorry, on the board again.
I think I like it because then you can just stack Snip Snaps on.
That's true.
On next turn on the Devastator, because one thing the Druid cannot really do that well is kill big minions.
Yes, that's true. And you've seen 2 Oasis Surges now, and you saw another minion played after the Oasis Surger, which means Floop cannot be an Oasis Surger, which is arguably a mistake in che0nsu's turn there. You know, I think he probably doesn't care, which is why he didn't do it that way, because he wants to save Floop for Zephrys, Nomi, or King Phaoris. Or Cenarius, exactly. One of the big boys in his hand. But I would argue that was maybe a slight non-optimized play, because you'd rather have Oasis Surger than Anubis Defender.
It's something I had to almost relearn when I started playing Mali Quest Druid, because one game I wanted to slap myself. I like played down Mali because I didn't need it. I wanted to activate Flute, then release it, and then swat.
And
that works.
Played
I played Mali, it was Flute. And then I just played another card. I think it was like Crystal Merchant to draw a card. I was like,
Everyone
Why
does
did
it
I
once.
do this? I was like,
some people do it
I
twice.
just conceded. I was just like, I'm sorry, this is just an embarrassing game. I'm going to get out.
Yeah. che0nsu now with the ability, should he so desire, to make a Tyrion, given that I believe Zephyrus would always offer it him here. And honestly, I think that's pretty good.
I don't like it.
Really?
No. Like what? So, okay, so if you Cenarius, right? And then, I guess it's similar. But I was thinking, if you just Cenarius,
you can set up
and
for
the
Fluke
board's
Cenarius
clear
next
or
turn.
not, and then if the board's not cleared, you have the second Cenarius to buff everything, so that's +6 damage. You already do a lot. You have Power of the Wild and Swipe to just kill Surrender. And there's only 3 minions on the board. It's not like it's a heavily brawlable thing, right?
Maybe that was better. I think they both equal about the same thing. And maybe he wants to save Cenarius for just like when he already has a board, so the initial Cenarius gets a bigger buff, and then the Fluke one could also potentially get a bigger buff.
Yeah, I guess for me that feels like overkill.
Yes.
But don't get me wrong, this is a good board.
Exactly.
It's like, this is still good.
With
I just wonder if it could be better.
With no weapon destruction in the deck for Surrender, I think this is a very likely to pretty much win the game for che0nsu at this point. Because Surrender is just, as always, against Druids struggling to get ahead.
And funnily enough, as if you can't escape fate, Omega Devastator is going to get some value and then be cleaned up very easily, just like it would have by an Oasis Searcher.
I mean, it probably will. che0nsu will probably still prioritize killing this off just to play around Snip Snap.
You just don't want any shenanigans, do you?
But, I mean, yes, I suppose. I'm just wondering if he's in the situation where he can, I don't know, make a big tour, maybe even just play Cenarius here, jam everything face, and then just say, snip, snap away, go crazy.
I think that would still work.
I think that would still
Cenarius.
Yeah, I honestly.
That's fine. Well, he could attack and then just trade anyway. Like, it wouldn't be the end of the world.
It's like only if he discovers Ziliax is the downside off of Omega Assembly.
Right.
That's the only.
Because also now che0nsu, this board does not care about Snip Snap.
Exactly, that's the thing, right?
But I think
he's so far ahead.
che0nsu could do either.
Exactly, he's so far ahead that why not play around top deck Ziliax?
I just can't wait for probably Brawl into Cenarius and then maybe Brawl into Cenarius. and Surrender's like, this is never going to end. I can see it. It's like, have you seen Doctor Strange?
Oh,
you know, when he catches him in the time loop?
Garrosh, I've come to bargain. Okay, that's a good start.
That's pretty good.
He has board. It's what he's wanted all game.
That is not mind-blowing.
6-2, 4-3. It's pretty good.
Oh! Oh! What? Yep. It took you that long to realize how that interaction works.
I wasn't paying attention.
Yep.
That's insane.
It was all part of the plan. That's really why he's not played Power of the Wild. He wanted Khadgar all along.
Ooh. Ooh.
Surrender's like, haha, fool, you played into Brawl. Water Ellies are sick as well.
Very sick.
Oh.
Yeah, that Super Collider ain't doing nothing.
Okay. You know what? 2 out of 3 very good mechs, I think.
That
from
ain't
the
bad,
assembly.
I've heard.
I'd take that every time. It has to be Brawl though, doesn't it? Does he actually have to kill Khadgar first?
Because it's so bad if Khadgar
Because the
survives.
problem is, Hidden Oasis summons a minion.
Yeah.
Cenarius summons a minion.
Spark
like...
Engine only gives 1 spark, right? So he wouldn't be able to play 2 sparks to kill him.
Oh, Surrender, you're a brave boy. I would have killed that Khadgar through sheer fear. It's probably a misplay, but I would have been terrified of that Khadgar living.
Is that just, a 3-3? That's fine. When I see Khadgar and a 3-3 survives, I'm thinking like, oh, Conjurer's Calling on that's pretty good though, but no, I need to get out of my mage headset.
We did say playing Druid is kind of like playing Mage.
In this instance, it feels like it. And now, you've seen 2 Warpaths, 2 Brawls. che0nsu here can just go off. I mean, there's still Plague of Wrath, which interestingly enough, could be pretty good here because of the 1/1s in play. And the Spark as well.
Yeah, there's also che0nsu's Plague if I don't care.
That's pretty good, right? He wants to just keep drawing to
has
set up for
Nomi.
Nomi. Yeah.
Oh, is it just lethal? It's 4, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I'm not missing anything, right? He's just pushing, he's just getting rid of the cards.
Yeah, and I mean, the swipe there as well was pretty perfect to get rid of the minions. Plague of Wrath does nothing. Super Collider does nothing. Tomb Warden is not big enough.
Surrender does nothing. What taunt could he possibly? He could make 5 flunkies. He just chain discuss them. Nope.
I think even then he'd be struggling.
Even Surrender's scared. The shake of the head and a little bit of a rough game there because you've got to feel if you're in Surrender's C right now, you kind of couldn't do much there.
Yeah.
Because that's the power level of not only just Druid in general and why people are playing this Druid deck, but also just Oasis Surger on 5 when the quest is active. Having to like snap back from that feels tough. And again, it's just one of these, if we could travel to an alternate universe where Surrender played the Devastator on 4 just as a minion, I'd just love to see the outcome. The outcome probably ends up being the same in terms of who wins and loses, but just how the interactions would change would just be very interesting to me. That's all.
It really would. And I think this is one of those instances where it feels like a very unfair game when you're in the game, but this feels like a victory that came for che0nsu before the battle even started, right? It was just the fact that he sees a lot of players protecting Warrior, shielding Warrior every single time so that it can't be banned away. Week 1 and 2 so far, it has been by far the most shielded class. And so he's saying, I'm going to shield Druid. I'm going to get that win against Warrior because it just feels like such a dominant matchup at the moment. That's
it. And I think it's important to remember, you know, we might have some viewers that watch that and be like, lol, what's the Warrior? Warrior can't do anything. What's a stupid game? But there are decks that are built in certain ways to beat the current top tier meta decks. Right? That's called the game, you know. And Druid has a good matchup versus Warrior because of those reasons you can see. And again, it's why I think I'm just gonna stay on the Bomb Warrior train. I feel like Bomb Warrior does so many similar things that Control Warrior does, except you can just aggressively curve way more often. And there's bomb damage to just, you know, in certain matchups that threaten a bit more. So I feel that Bomb Warrior just is more of a go-to, but that's mainly my personal preference, I think.
I mean, I can agree with you in theory. The problem for me with Bomb Warrior is I don't know what cards to play. There's so many cards now that I want to put in there. When you factor in the Fright and Flunky, Armageddillo, and Tomb Warden package, or even just Fright and Flunky, which I would say is the best individual card out of those.
It's the one card I play in Bomb Warrior.
Right, exactly. I feel like that has to come in, which is one of the reasons why I didn't like Patra's Bomb Warrior from week 1, is she didn't include Fright and Flunkies, which I felt somewhat surprised by. But then, you know, to her credit, if you're including Fright and Flunkies, what are you taking out? Like, do you play no brawls, 1 brawl, 1 Elic, 2 Elics? Do you play Acolytes? Like, what are you going for in this deck?
Less 1-drops, maybe.
Maybe,
because
but I love the 1-drops.
Yeah, but because you've got 2 drops, maybe you could cut 1 or 2. I don't know. I mean, well, I do because I've got a deck built for it. But I am no expert in terms of deck building Bomb Warrior in the new meta, but we'll see. What I do like, though, as we move into game number 3, is those keeps of Armageddillo and the Flunky.
Really?
Very, very powerful cards. Yeah, I always keep Flunky anyway, but the Armageddillo is where you guarantee the taunt that you probably aren't going to play before Dillo anyway.
Yeah.
And I think against Hunter, the health of the Armageddillo is very good on turn 6 because there's not much they do. If they unleash the beast, well, it doesn't kill it, does it? So it's actually like a pretty solid minion to play into Hunter.
And if we were to see, this is an interesting pick. I think it's between the Defender and the Warbear out of the 2 bears available. Omega Defender has the benefit of setting you up with a perfect 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 curve. But the downside is, of course, the Armageddillo has nothing in hand to buff if you are curving out with both the Defender and the Zilliax.
Right.
So maybe we see Surrender take a deviation as he is doing here, which
I like it.
I think I like it. Yeah, I'm not entirely made up on my mind about it, but it allows him to hopefully curve out, coin Armageddillo on 5 for a very powerful couple of buffs on the taunt minions.
This is going to be the big question, isn't it? How Surrender manages these turns. Because he has Snip Snap, he also has coins. We could coin Zilliax next turn if he really wanted to, you know, if push comes to shove.
Yep.
He could wait, he could coin Dillo, he could take the whole thing slowly and save coin for a later date and maybe coin into Boom. There's a lot of things he could do. Whereas che0nsu, also playing playing what appears to be
higher beast package.
Yeah, a few more beasts. The build is different. There's a Sandbinder in here for che0nsu, which means you can more consistently draw a Siamat or Zephyrus, which are two pretty good cards, so I'm told. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. Anytime you can get Hyena down here like this, you're feeling pretty good about life.
che0nsu makes a very sad swing of the bow here. You know, he would obviously like to activate it and get more charges on the Eagle 1 bow, but the value trade onto one of the 2/2s I think was just a little bit too tough to take there.
Surrender is in a reasonable spot because he has a good go at proccing the secret. Or testing for certain things, should I say.
Yeah, so by attacking here, he tests for Snake Trap, and I think he was setting up for double Warpath. Yeah. This actually was perfect.
That's what I mean, like the tokens are fantastic, yeah.
Oh, actually, no, yeah, I'm wrong. I was thinking for a second for some reason that it would activate the pressure plate as well because there was the 1/1 left in play, but obviously
right, yeah.
almost perfect there. He got the 1 damage in, which was important, and tested for Snake and Freezing, both of which were fantastic.
Yep. And explosiveness as well. He's tested for pretty much everything except rank cap and pressure plate.
We were saying he's not playing high main in the deck.
He is now.
Zephyrus quickly remedies that, but wow, speaking of powerful 6-drops, this Armageddillo went from good to nuts pretty quick.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, it's a tough call, right? Because not necessarily for Surrender as much, but if Surrender plays the Dillo, what does che0nsu do? There's Deadly Shot Go, or there's trade into high main. What do you value more? And I think that is actually a very difficult question.
I think I prefer the good Deadly Shot here while it's available.
But if you know taunt minions have just been buffed,
right,
you can snap kill a taunt minion.
Yes.
So
is it likely to be bigger than a 4/7? Like even Tomb Warden goes up to what, like a 5/8, which is bigger, but not necessarily that much bigger, and you'll be able to deal with it then. I don't know. Like you don't know what it means. It is very interesting. I agree. It's not a snap decision, but I think I agree with Surrender's choice.
And there's got to be a certain level of frustration, or at least there would be if it was me, in that you Zephyrus into a 6-drop, then don't play the 6-drop on curve, and he's like, I could have played something else. I could have got Tyrion later. I
mean, he could have just played Zephyrus on that turn and got a Deadly Shot or whatever to take it out. Wouldn't have quite been able to have Black Knight, but that would have been pretty nuts actually. Which is one of the reasons I was a little bit surprised to see the Zephyrus come down, because obviously, you know, his reasoning was pretty clear. He snap picked the high mage, he knew he was going to get that. But when your opponent is playing a taunt heavy deck and they've played Frightened Flunky but not the taunt that came off of it, I wonder if saving it pretty much specifically for Black Knight would be worth it.
The more I play Zephyrus, the less I play it for. I find myself playing in 2 instances. One, super late game when I want a Tyrion, right? Or just I want
a specific thing.
So something insane value is what I'm really after. Or if I'm about to die to something, if I need a backstab or a silence, something like those two. But I think like mid game for a curve,
you don't like the curve.
I never feel like it does enough because I think maybe I overrate Zephyrus. I feel like the potential of its late game sheer power is insane.
Yes, and I think for che0nsu, he already had a respectable curve. Like we could have seen on turn 5, like where he went Animal Companion Zephyrus, we could have seen Animal Companion Hero Power, Houndmaster Hero Power, or Houndmaster Zephyrus next turn, right? Like it's worked out pretty well for him, to be fair. He's getting in a lot of chip damage here, which is, I guess, his main victory condition he's moving towards here. But it was a very interesting play.
And don't get me wrong, like I'm not saying it was bad. It's just you've always got to question it when the card you've got is still in hand and you picked a curve option.
I wonder.
Weird call for Surrender now.
Very weird call.
He knows his minions safe from pretty much everything because he can control the order of spells. It's still pressure play, right? I'm not missing something now. He can just attack him with this, clear up the Zephyrus.
And now che0nsu is he is now realizing the downside of his plays, because before it was all, you know, peaches and cream. He was just pushing through. He had the deadly shot to take out the taunt, played out the Zephyrus, and was getting a lot of damage to face. Now he doesn't have the Zephyrus. He can't find a good answer to these big minions, and he's gonna have to start chunking through manually just by trading in these minions, which feels horrible.
Yeah, even though that's kind of a bear, it's also mostly a mech, so it doesn't really allow for Houndmaster to get the job done, does it? Oof. That's a brawl board. It's a little bit sticky, I guess, with the hyenas that come from the high main, of course. It's funny, I saw a tweet yesterday, I think it was, from Ixar, and it was a screenshot, because he's been playing some classic WoW, as many people I imagine have, of Savannah High Main.
He was like, oh!
And I don't know if you saw, but I posted a couple of screenshots in our Discord about like some minions that I found in WoW.
That is the part of classic WoW I would like to get to, because yeah, I mean, for those of you unaware, I'm not a WoW player, but I've tried playing a little bit of classic WoW and struggled a little bit to get into the start of it, because I am not, you know, there's no nostalgia for me, whereas a lot of the other players have that. But I would like to see the minions, like when players post from
I died
Hearthstone.
to Tidecallers in WoW and in Hearthstone yesterday, so I got destroyed by Murlocs every which way. Yeah. In 3D and 2D. Okay.
Well, have you know that the Hearthstone graphics engine works in a 3-dimensional space? Sorry.
All right, don't throw logic at me.
I'm not Fino.
Houndmaster is live, but you always have to wonder, is Unleash the Beast just better?
Oh, this Houndmaster looks very juicy here on the high main.
Oh, it's one damage. Trade. One damage off with the Ziliax as well to just clear everything and have like a buffed 1/1,
yeah.
Buffed high main, and the Houndmaster as his 3 minions on board. That would be. We're just making noises now. That's all we've got right there.
That's what dreams are made of right there.
That would have been insane. And that's che0nsu's hesitation as well, because he can't quite do everything he wants to do.
Yeah.
Which is why I wonder, is Unleash the Beast just fine?
What does Unleash the Beast do though? It just dies to one of these things. Right? I don't like Unleash the Beast.
Well, I just like locking it in for Zul'jin. You can Houndmaster stuff after Zul'jin.
I think this is just such a perfect opportunity for Houndmaster. I really like getting it down. Especially as che0nsu is actually one of the understated things that I think he's done very, very well this game, is he saw a Warpath at the start of the game, and all of his plays have been very weak to Warpath, but pretty strong to everything else. And I think that's a great way of recognizing what cards you need to play around, because he's realized unless it comes off the top, there ain't no second Warpath.
And every single turn, the board isn't Warpathed again. He knows Surrender doesn't have it because he would have used it. So it's not like, oh, Surrender's holding on for the perfect Warpath. It's like, no, he just doesn't have it because he would have played it.
And I think this is really the key about playing against Warrior, because all their removal is so many different tools, and they have enough tools to cover every situation. Brawl for these big boards of big minions, Warpath for the small ones, Reckless Mummy for if you have a couple of 3 health guys, Super Collider for a couple of big guys, and you can't play around all of them. So you have to play around specific ones that you realize aren't there. And che0nsu has just done that very, very nicely in this game.
I must choose. What now?
Do you like that? I guess
I'm going to wait till I see the outcome and decide.
Well, so, yeah, what happened there is he played... Obviously, he just got his Tomb Warden killed, but if you think about it, if he brawls and his Tomb Warden survives, it obviously dies anyway.
Right.
So what he's saying there is he wants to 100% get rid of the pressure plate before he goes for the brawl, which I guess is understandable, but honestly think there was a reasonable chance he could have just not activated that. play for the rest of the game.
Yeah, and the problem is, as time's ticking on, like Surrender's not close to winning this game right now, so the game will continue for X amount more turns. Zul'jin will just reactivate pressure play anyway. It is something I always think about. As I move towards the late game of turns versus Hunter, I always think, well, if I proc the secret, does he just play Zul'jin and I'm in a worse spot because I'm just giving him value? Because if you don't proc it and they play Zul'jin, well, they're probably going to play it anyway, and they're not going to wait for the secret to be proc to play Zul'jin, right?
But that was such an interesting spot, though, because it it was also the case that it was basically a free procking of the secret, because if his guy survived the draw, it died anyway, and if it died in all likelihood, then it stays in place. So I think that was just a free proc of the secret there. It's weird to get my head around, given that he just let his minion die there for no value. Very interesting.
Really would like to see these Unleash the Beasts start getting used now.
Me too.
Because I think you cannot Zul'jin until they're in the pool.
Do you divert and go for Ziliax this turn, though? Or go for Zul'jin this turn? Wow! This is hella aggressive.
What does he even get? Deadly Unleash? Right, okay.
And yeah, that's it.
Wow. My question, Derek, is that enough to beat Warrior consistently? I don't know. Maybe.
This does play into what che0nsu I've been praising him for this game, though, which is, what does my opponent actually have? You can't be afraid of, you know, clear board. That's not a card, right? It's specific cards.
I'd love it if it was.
Clear board.
It just doesn't have card text. It's a spell, but it just has no card text. It's like, if
Clear
you don't
board.
know what it does, you don't deserve to play the card.
He just renamed Twisting Nether to just like the picture is just a white box. Clear board.
This place is
But you have to be afraid of specific things, is what I was saying. And che0nsu is saying, I've seen a Brawl, I've seen a Warpath, I don't think you have the extra board clears to clear this off. Surrender absolutely does, though. And che0nsu's in a miserable position.
Yeah, Bone Wraith actually pretty solid. It's I think, a continually maybe not talked about enough minion, but Bone Wraith is a pain to deal with almost in any deck whenever it pops up. Obviously, there are some decks that utilize it a lot more than others, but if you could just get a random Bone Wraith involved, like how much more annoying is this for che0nsu?
Big time. Yeah, I always wonder about how good Bone Wraith actually is, because the obvious comparison is the Sludge Belcher, but then I wonder, like, would Sludge Belcher be good enough to see play? Like, how good actually was Sludge Belcher? Because people think of it as this insane card. Was it actually that good?
I think it was good back then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, next question. If Sludge Belcher was in the game, Flunky would be even better.
Yeah,
because that's solid. The thing with Sludge Belcher as well back then is so many decks were aggro.
Yeah, that's true.
That it was insane, right?
Yeah, it was just worth it. But it wasn't like, it wasn't that much stats you got for the cost, right?
I think the 3 attack was a big deal.
That's true.
Because it was a 5-mana 3/5.
Yeah. I guess this is all days gone by anyway. Most players won't even know.
Olden days.
I did love those
Just
decks,
because you
though.
can't reminisce about WoW Classic, you're reminiscing about Hearthstone instead.
Classic, yeah, exactly.
Imagine, I'd play that game.
I would play that game. Oh. Old school Miracle Road.
It's like, well,
oh.
Blizzard have got the next 5 years worth of releases sorted. It's like WoW Classic, StarCraft Classic, already done by the way.
Yeah.
Diablo Classic, oh, it's all
you
there.
can just buy that and play it.
Nope, needs to be Classic. Remastered then, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, well che0nsu is going to keep this pressure up in a funny way to me at least. This Desert Spirit, like, deal 1. Make a locust.
It's not bad.
It's better than nothing, but it's just funny.
Right, and he is reaping the benefits of his play with Zul'jin here, which is obviously significantly lower on value is the downside, but the upside is 17 health, a decent minion on board, a little bit of value still in hand, hero power can still chip face. He's just going for the lethal as quick as he can.
This is actually Hero Locust. It single-handedly stands between this Wyvern and a Dynamatic.
Just like Dynamatic hurling a bomb at the Wyvern, and just a Locust flies by.
It's like a very overly sensitive proximity bomb. And like a bug flying by will set it off instead of it when it hits the Wyvern. it's always what makes me laugh about just the way card art has to be, is that those two things look reasonably similar size.
They do.
One is a tiny bug, and one is a massive wyvern.
Ain't Hearthstone crazy?
It blows my mind, Derek. Blows my mind. And now just shield slam, and this Locust is like, I'm still alive.
I saw the yellow border there, and I thought that was Bran. I've got to be honest. I was expecting that to be Bran, which would have been huge here for che0nsu. Because, honestly, outside of that, the rest of his deck is looking pretty slim. Like, good draws include Sandbinder to find Zephrys, Dino Tamer Bran, and Zephrys, to find Siamat, and Siamat itself.
It's a very weird card in this matchup, isn't it? Because it really is a 7-mana 2/4 deal 8 once, almost all the time. Because Warrior has so many ways to kill it off.
Which is clearly why Surrender is holding on so greedily to this Omega Devastator. Or I should not say greedily, I suppose. He's being very precious with it because he's got a specific use for it, which is, of course, King Crush himself.
What if he mummies, attacks, sees what happens, and then brawls? Because he's running out of the need of brawl, right? Like, how wide can che0nsu go with what cards he has left?
Well, when you say see what happens, he knows what the secrets are.
Didn't he play a secret? Isn't there still floating secrets? He played a snipe, and I'm not sure if I'm not sure if che0nsu's revealed every other secret in the deck. But I just think, I mean, even if it is snipe, if he's confident it might be snipe, I think this is still good. Because what you brawling for the rest of this game right now? There's not much left.
It's true.
And if he wants to hold on to his Devastator, I think he has to seriously consider. Okay, he's going to do it this way. Okay.
I think this works out.
Yeah, that's actually.
Still keeps the Devastator, all importantly, for that King Crush. And outside of that, you know, che0nsu can still keep making reasonably sized boards here. If he wants to protect at all costs the health on this Wyvern, we could see Hero Power, Swing, and Locust all going into the Dynamatic instead.
I wouldn't mind that. I think if che0nsu can take some damage right now, that is for sure. He's above 30 health as Hunter. Yes. He can take that damage.
Yeah, I like this too. Like, the difference between 5 and 2 gets pretty discreet when Dynamatics are out of the way.
Exactly.
Just like little annoying piddly trades that he has to work around.
Is it gonna happen, Derek? I think he might have to.
But he knows there's another beast in the hand, right?
Cross that bridge when you come to it. He also might draw Boom next turn. Because remember, Surrender's not even drawn Boom and he's got barely any cards left. I think Surrender just... Because my issue is if Surrender does not clear this, does che0nsu just attack Hero Power next? Because it's not going to get any easier and he's still taking the damage. Because che0nsu may not even play this into it, right? He might not just play the next Unleash the Beast. And even if he does, he gets a free 7 damage next turn for nothing.
I must choose.
Or Surrender could use the Devastator this turn and hope that he has something to proc a Plague on the Bran the turn after, you know, X amount of turns after, which is also a reasonable way to go about it.
It's so difficult, this decision, and this one decision will shape the course of the game so drastically.
Imagine if that was just Bran off the top.
I know, at any point it could be. Like, only 10 cards left, it's not ridiculous.
I was going to say double 5 drop, it's just a good
Precision. Perfection.
Subject 9, unfortunately, not quite a mech. I think he escaped just before he made the full transition.
Yeah. Cyborg, I guess.
Yes. Super Glider, yeah, definitely.
It just has to be there, doesn't it?
Yep.
Also, the Eternium Rover. Not bad. All Surrender's really bothered about right now is just specifically not dying in a couple of turns. And Rover helps with that. Because I'm running out outside of exactly... Oh, there's Bran and Siamat.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? There's still a couple
and
of
I believe that is more or less it. Even though obviously there's 9 cards left, I'm not being stupid, but in terms of actual threats...
It's like Secret Keeper. I think there's a bunch of 1-drops, like Secret Keeper, Shimmerfly, Springboard. Have we seen any of those?
No.
Scavenging Hyena, like it's really small stuff. Masked Contender,
which will pull nothing.
Yeah, not the stuff you want at all.
So Surrender basically has to get over the hurdle of the Unleash the Beast and the Bran, and then he will probably win, especially if he gets Boom down.
That's a big hurdle, though. A very big
Is it, though?
Yes. Look at the tools he has. Like, how does he actually deal with these big minions? Especially given that he's only at 19 health. That's not that much.
Okay, but Brawl for this, Plague for the Bran. Done?
Like, Brawl for this, you say that. Is it just a 50-50? What if it misses?
He could just take 6 and Plague this and try and Brawl Bran.
Just take your 2 out of 3? Oh, man.
You could just swing in twice, right? Take 6, armor up, Plague.
Yes.
He only really takes a small amount of damage. He gains armor from the hit, and then he gains armor from the hero power. He Plagues, and then the turn after, he has...
Right,
if Bran comes down, the Rover into Brawl becomes a 1 out of 3, or 2 out of 3 to like get rid of the King Crush.
Right, and that's it. It's not a discussion about what's good now, it's about what's necessary later.
Which is why I think Plague can be used now, right?
But the thing is, Plague can be better against the King Crush because he could swing into Bran, which means he only takes 2 damage, and it would still damage the King Crush.
True. But the Brawl's worse now. If he loses this Brawl, he loses the game.
Well, the Brawl can still be a 2 out of 3 to have a good outcome. He has to commit another card in order to get there by playing the Eternium Rover beforehand. I mean, I agree. If he goes for the Brawl here and loses, the game ends.
Which is, I'd rather like go for the more consistent one now and try and draw Boom quicker than they draw Bran.
He's doing it. I think I prefer this play just because you can get the less damage hit later on. che0nsu hands together in prayer.
Yeah, got it. Surrender got it.
The expected outcome occurring.
Okay, Pressure Plate going down.
Yeah, whatever.
I don't think Pressure Plate counts as damage, so I believe that's 0 armor, yeah. Yeah, it's like a Deadly Shot style attack. Yeah. And bro.
I think that's a Spring Paw. Yeah. Which is, hey, you know, this is stuff on the board at least. This is 7 damage on board. That has to be dealt with. Or
never rains, it pours.
Yes. Very nice. Very nice.
Yes. Oh, not bad.
So, hero power shield slam and then just tank it? I guess?
Because now they're just... they're just waiting for each of them to draw a certain card. And I would have been able to say they were both 7 cost legendaries, but not the case anymore.
Not anymore, yeah.
Surrender's face.
And like that also factors into it because it's specifically 9 mana now. Shield Slam is the only card you can play alongside it. You know, would Surrender ever consider saving Shield Slam to go with Dr. Boom specifically?
Well, if that's the case, then he's just hitting and Plague, right? Well, the hit also does kill one of the Spring Paw.
Because also he gets exactly 7 armor, not 8, so it wouldn't kill King Crush unless he swings into something as well.
It's okay, because he could armor up this turn. Oh no, because King Crush would already hit it.
Yeah.
Ah, he could have just about got enough armor. Yeah, so if that's the case, then it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like, I always do this where like, I'm saying he could get Dr. Boom off the top and do that, and I start to think that means he gets it 100%.
You just messed up, right?
How?
If he hit it first, it would have killed the Spring Paw. Wouldn't it? Am I going crazy? It's Super Collider.
But then he would have lost the armor, and he wouldn't have been able to kill it off. Because it would only have had...
Oh, shit. Oh, sure. It would have. Yeah, it wouldn't have done enough damage. Yeah, sorry. I was thinking the Spring Paw damage would have made up for it, but obviously it wouldn't. Yeah, I'm being very stupid. Why do I ever question Surrender? I feel silly every time I do it, because I'm almost always wrong. Oh!
Do you overwrite Dr. Boom?
He has to.
He has to.
Because the only time you don't, or it wouldn't pay off, is if Dr. Boom was that card, the next one on the top of the deck.
But if he does this, that's just conceding to Bran off the top. It's a 1 in 6 to lose.
It's tense.
Whereas if he hero powers, he can survive against Bran. Not Bran kill command, as we can see, but he can survive against exactly Bran.
I think you do it. Because if that next card is not Boom, he loses the game anyway. He loses anyway.
It has to be. But then, what kind of cards is he creating that are good enough to win the game?
Any taunt.
Yeah, I guess.
Any taunt, any heal, you know, is insane right
Yep.
now. Because the problem is, if he doesn't play Luciana now, and Boom's not his next card, he will forever be in the same state. He can't play Luciana because he will always die to the King Crush. Because these two 1/1s negate his hero power.
He's just passing on the Luciana. This is
Oh,
passing over a 7/7 body. And there is the King Crush to close things out. che0nsu up to a 3-1 scoreline in Week 2 of Hearthstone Grandmasters. And Surrender 0-3 at the jaws of King Crush.
Yeah, Surrender cannot believe it. Can't even look. And you know what? I don't blame him. Congratulations to che0nsu, though. I think che0nsu's been playing really well. I think we've seen such a difference from his opening last season to his opening this season. He's looking really, really good as far as I'm concerned. Obviously, I'll always feel it when Surrender loses, but I think that game especially was really just down to the wire in terms of the ending. I think there aren't too many plays either side that I really disagreed with. I think Surrender might have had to have played Elise. He would have died anyway. He wouldn't have actually changed anything. But I think overall it was just a pretty close game, and good job to che0nsu.
Really was. I love seeing these games that we so rarely get to see anymore, where it's just a grinding down to when each player has 1 or 2 cards in hand, 3 or 4 cards left in deck. Every single resource is so paramount, because Hearthstone is in a very different form for the most part in today's metagame, where it's a lot of card draw, a lot of very powerful late game scenarios, which is obviously very fun to play and very fun to watch. But it's a very different style of play and very skill testing to these players. And I'm sure, despite the fact that we mostly agreed with their plays, or at least can see the reasoning for it, I'm sure they'll look back and find 50 mistakes that they could have improved on.
Yeah, and then there was also, again, you talk about how close the resources were. che0nsu could have put more Unleash the Beast into his Zul'jin.
Yes.
I'm not saying it was right or wrong. I think
decision.
Naturally I would have gone Unleash the Beast first. I think so powerful post Zul'jin. But he didn't do that. He still won the game. He did Grand, of course. But if you think if there was just one more 5/5 on the board, Surrender might have had to use AoE earlier and quicker, which means everything else che0nsu does for the rest of the game is that much safer. And that's how close that series was. So again, I feel like the good day we had yesterday is just going to keep on rolling as we move into match number 2.